All I can really say about this week's episode of Higurashi When They Cry Go is that Satoko's point of view is more terrifying than any of us really imagined. One of the biggest things that would have changed everything, once again, my thought was, oh, if they just have a conversation, that will change a lot, that they have two separate dreams. Nope, that didn't work, so clearly the next logical point of view is like, oh, what if they just both know that they're looping? That will solve everything. But this episode comes around saying, no, Sadako already knew she was looping, but she just wanted to break her. And I'm like, she has truly lost her marbles. I think if anyone was really bound and bent to support Sadako's dreams, this episode is probably going to make you do a double take, because neither one of them is wrong for wanting nothing to change or wanting something to change. A girl who had to live 100 years trying to escape a hell-forsaken village wants to take her best friend with her to a school that she believes won't be hell-forsaken, but also because this is a girl who has been abandoned for so long. If Rika leaves, Sadako will have literally no one, and that's the last thing she wants. Yes, we've seen how the school goes down, but that was never her original intention, right? So the only way to get through to Rika in that situation is for her to know that Sadako is also looping, and Sadako wanting Rika to stick by the village makes sense. But when you see how many times she tried to the point that she actually gets to see the fragments, she gets to see the loops that Rika went through, and she doesn't say, you know what, I want to stop. She says, no, let's make her remember, and I'm going to break her. Because, as they say in this episode, the one thing that really doesn't kind of get reset is the mind, so it's not really immortality, because eventually your mind will crack and break. And Rika, from what we've seen here, from what we learned in this episode, she came very close multiple times to truly giving up, as any normal person would. If Rika was a weak person, she would have gave up after the first couple of attempts, maybe even the first one. So to see an episode like this, and just seeing from Satoko's point of view, I think one of the most important things we should see, because there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And to see just how broken her mind is, it's pretty terrifying. And it really does put into perspective, Sadako pointing a gun at Rika, because, if she knew she loops, what was the point of doing that? And then you realize that she's not going to remember how she died, but she will live in the same fragment, so whether Rika's the one who ends up dead or Sadako, no matter what, they're going to be kind of linked together, so the same Rika and the same Sadako will always be in the same loop. It's pretty heartbreaking, and I mean, they even casually drop even more information and clarification, so if you haven't seen the original Higurashi, we get the whole Queen Bee situation where it makes no sense for the Queen Bee Rika to get killed, which is why Irie and the whole lab is trying to protect her, because she is the Queen Bee. And I'm like, oh, that's really nice, even more clarification about the whole syndrome and everything like that, as we casually watch Sadako just lose her marbles. I actually forgot that last week had a whole chandelier death, and this episode starts back on that, and I was just like, holy shit, I forgot how graphic it was. And then throughout the episode, we have knives going in through throats, and just seeing the different loops, I assume many of which were from the original Higurashi anime. I'm not sure if any of them were brand new for GOU specifically. But still, there was obviously some that I knew were familiar from the old one, we have Keiichi beating with a bat and things like that. That was hinted at the very beginning of GOU or something like that, which was a loop from the previous anime. But still, I'm not sure if all of the kind of kills and things like that we got to witness Sadako kind of viewing on a TV what Rika went through. I'm not sure if it was completely all old content or if it was sprinkled with some new, but either way, it looked graphically beautiful is probably the best way to put it, and I really appreciate what they're able to accomplish with such a very disgusting episode. It was horrible to watch what we were seeing, as it was bad enough having literally Devil God just sitting on a couch. If she had potato chips, it was the only way to tie that scene together even more, as she's just having fun watching kids torture themselves in loops for her pleasure. That's the sickest shit ever, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Just seeing the brutality and then flipping back to, in a normal series, would just be like a slice of life god who would give you words of wisdom. In Higurashi, it's someone who's letting more and more torture take place because this is just what's fun. And I think it's very interesting because the whole idea is that immortality is a very interesting thing, because even if your mind does kind of last and it doesn't corrupt, eventually you would grow bored if nothing ever changes and you have no fears in life. So what would entertain you? Well, the fears of others. And that's an interesting thing and an interesting concept, all things considered. But I mean, if that wasn't bad enough, to then see Sadako do the same thing and how it really is putting into perspective and just kind of once again highlighting, is there going to be a good end for Higurashi? If this is a one season and done season, I don't think so. I'm going to be honest, because there's still a way for it to end positively. I mentioned it, I think it was last week, how people brought up the concept that if Rika and Sadako both would have got into the van before obviously she parted ways and started looping, what if the brother was fine and that's who they were bringing her to show, hey, I'm going to school, you can be with your brother, you won't be alone, everyone's happy, and we can still be best friends. That is very possible for a good ending. But if there isn't going to be a second season, because there is the rumor, because they are planning to announce something by the looks of it, the author is, I think it's like when this show wraps up, there should be some sort of announcement at some sort of convention or panel, or I forget exactly what it is. But nonetheless, people are wondering, is it going to be like an Umineko adaptation? Is it going to be a new Higurashi anime? Because there is definitely room for a second season, no questions asked. But I wouldn't be surprised if it ends in what I just said about how it could end positively, but I could also see it just ending with Rika stabbing Sadako with the shard, and it just pissing off people as the author just trolls and laughs himself away. Like, there's a lot of different routes this can go down. And for a show all about these shards and different loops and different fragments of memories, honestly, that's probably what you want to expect, all things considered. I'm generally curious, like, for how much I love GOU, I would love to see another season of Higurashi just for more Higurashi content. But the other part of me is kind of hoping that, like, something like Umineko, which apparently hasn't had a good adaptation based on what I've heard, it would be nice to see that in a really good kind of high quality package, but at the same time, do I want more Higurashi? Do I want Umineko? I don't know. I kind of want both, and I'm not sure which one I want more, because if this does end very open-ended and brutal, I wonder if that's going to be satisfying or not. I mean, 22 episodes in, I've loved every single episode, and I'd personally argue this was the episode that hooked me in the most. But at the same time, is a bad ending what I want to see, or do I want to see a good ending? Because, I mean, I could go either way, but I also know a lot of people really loved Higurashi because they ultimately got what they thought was a good ending, so if it ended bad here, how bad would that piss people off? I don't know. I'd also argue this was one of the most visually impressive episodes. I mean, anytime you have, like, little fragments and shards floating around your scene, you're going to have a visually impressive episode, but the way they blended how the previous loops looked to the blurriness of some of them and just seeing different characters' perspectives and the voice acting, like, this was an episode that was visually stunning, and you could honestly have muted the audio and really been sucked in by the graphicness of just how brutal things were happening. I mean, Keiichi kind of got the short end of the stick the most, I felt like, with some of the loops we got to see from him and the crushing sorrow on his face, but I'm just a sucker for this kind of, like, different realm where it's kind of like an other world where you get to see all the other loops and things like that. I love the purple, I love the lighting, it's just such a visually impressive location, and I think is like the optimal way to really kind of put into perspective what's been happening. And it really is just an amazing location, all things considered, and I wouldn't be mad if we got to see even more of it next week or even in episode 24 before it all wraps up. I would be curious though, do you think we're getting a good ending or a bad ending? And if you think either one, explain where you think it's going to go, because this is one of those shows that I'm really interested to read so many different opinions, because it could really go either way, and either way, good or bad, can branch off to 100 different endings. So honestly, we can only wait and see, but I'd love to read and kind of know your theories down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.